The morning sun shone bright over the human settlement on planet Kepler 442b. 3 years had passed since the colony ship New Haven had landed on this distant world. Captain Jake Miller stood on his porch, drinking coffee and watching the busy streets of their small town. Life was good here. The air was clean, the soil was rich for farming, and most importantly, the aliens were friendly. The Zephyrians looked like giant praying mantises, standing 8 feet tall with long, thin arms and big compound eyes. They had welcomed the humans with open arms and seemed genuinely curious about human ways. Dr. Lisa Carter walked down the main street with her 6-year-old daughter Amy. Behind them trotted Whiskers, a fat tabby cat who never left Amy's side. Lisa worked as the colony's expert on alien life forms. She spent her days studying the strange plants and animals of this new world. Amy skipped along the sidewalk, her blonde pigtails bouncing. She stopped to pet every dog they passed and waved at the neighbors working in their gardens. Whiskers followed closely, his green eyes always watching the area around Amy. The cat had been unusually alert lately, but Lisa thought nothing of it. They reached the central plaza where humans and Zephyrians often met to trade goods and share stories. Several tall aliens stood talking with human merchants. Their clicking voices sounded like insects, but the translation devices made conversation easy. "Look, Mama." Amy pointed at a group of Zephyrian children playing what looked like a game of tag. "They're playing just like us," Lisa smiled. The young Zephyrians were about the size of adult humans but moved with quick, jerky motions. Their games involved a lot of jumping and rapid arm movements. It was fascinating to watch. Elder Kethvar, the leader of the local Zephyrian community, approached them. His compound eyes reflected the sunlight like mirrors. "Good morning, Dr. Carter," he said through his translator. "And little Amy, how are you today?" "I'm good," Amy chirped, hugging Whiskers closer. The cat had gone stiff in her arms, his ears flattened against his head. Kethvar's head tilted as he studied Amy. His eyes seemed to focus on her small frame, the way she moved, how she breathed. "Such a small human," he said softly. "So young. So tender." Something in his voice made Lisa feel uncomfortable, but she couldn't put her finger on what it was. "Yes, she's still growing," Lisa replied carefully. The alien's long arms hung at his sides, but Lisa noticed his fingers were twitching slightly. His breathing had changed too, becoming faster and more shallow. "In my culture," Kethvar continued, "the young are precious. We protect them, or we consume them." Lisa's blood ran cold. "Excuse me. Forgive me," Kethvar said quickly. "The translation device sometimes chooses wrong words. I meant to say we cherish them." But his compound eyes never left Amy. Whiskers began to growl deep in his throat. It was a sound Lisa had never heard from him before. The cat's fur was standing up all along his back, making him look twice his normal size. "Whiskers, what's wrong with you?" Amy asked, trying to calm her pet. But the cat continued to stare at Kethvar with pure hatred. Other Zephyrians in the plaza had stopped their conversations. They turned to look at Kethvar, then at Amy. Their heads moved in unison, like a flock of birds tracking prey. The clicking sounds they made to each other became faster and more excited. "We should go," Lisa said, taking Amy's hand. "I just remembered I have work to do." "Of course," Kethvar replied, but as they turned to leave, he took a step forward. His long arm reached out, the fingers extending toward Amy's shoulder. Whiskers exploded from Amy's arms with a loud hiss. The cat landed on the ground between Amy and the alien, his back arched and claws extended. Every hair on his body stood straight up and his tail had puffed out like a bottle brush. Kethvar jerked his hand back as if he'd been burned. The other Zephyrians made sharp clicking sounds that the translators couldn't interpret. Their compound eyes all focused on the small cat that dared to challenge their elder. "I apologize," Kethvar said, but his voice sounded different now, hungrier. "Your small creature seems protective." Lisa scooped up Whiskers, who continued to growl and stare at the aliens. "He's never acted like this before," she said. "Maybe he's not feeling well." "Animals have strong instincts," Kethvar observed. "They sense things that thinking beings often miss. The way he said, thinking beings, made Lisa's skin crawl. It sounded like he didn't consider humans to be in that category. Come on, Amy, Lisa said firmly. We really do need to get home. As they walked away, Lisa could feel the Zephyrians watching them. She glanced back once and saw Kethvar still standing. In the same spot, his head turned to follow their movement. The other aliens had formed a loose circle around him, all facing in their direction. Mama, why was Whiskers so mad? Amy asked as they hurried down the street. I don't know, sweetheart. Maybe he smelled something he didn't like. But Lisa was beginning to suspect it was more than that. Animals were known to sense danger before humans did. Dogs could detect earthquakes, cats could sense when their owners were sick, and horses refused to cross unsafe bridges. What had Whiskers sensed about Kethvar? That evening, Lisa sat at her computer reviewing her notes about Zephyrian behavior. She had always focused on their social structures and communication methods, but now she found herself reading about their biology and natural history. The Zephyrians had evolved as hunters. Their compound eyes were designed to track fast-moving prey. Their long arms ended in razor-sharp claws that could slice through metal. Their quick reflexes and ability to remain perfectly still made them excellent ambush predators. But they had told the humans that they had evolved beyond their hunting instincts. They claimed to be civilized now, living on cultivated plants and artificial proteins. Lisa thought about the way Kethvar had looked at Amy, the way his breathing had changed, the way his fingers had twitched. She thought about the word he had. It was tender. Outside her window, Whiskers sat on the porch railing, staring out into the darkness beyond the town. His ears were forward, listening to sounds Lisa couldn't hear. His tail twitched occasionally, like he was tracking something moving in the shadows. Lisa made a decision. Tomorrow she would take Amy somewhere safe while she did more research. Maybe she was overreacting, but Whiskers had never been wrong about danger before. She didn't know that in the forest beyond the town, Kethvar was already making plans. The hunt would begin soon. The next morning came too soon for Lisa's liking. She had barely slept, thinking about Kethvar's strange behavior and Whiskers' reaction. But Amy was excited about their planned trip to the forest to collect plant samples, and Lisa didn't want to worry her daughter. Can Whiskers come with us? Amy asked as she packed her small backpack with snacks and drawing supplies. Of course, Lisa replied, checking her scientific equipment one more time. The forest was only a 20-minute walk from town, and they planned to stay close to the main path. It should be perfectly safe. Whiskers seemed more relaxed this morning, but Lisa noticed he stayed very close to Amy. The cat followed them out of the house and down the path toward the forest, his green eyes constantly scanning their surroundings. The forest on Kepler 442b was beautiful in an alien way. The trees had silver leaves that caught the morning light and scattered it in rainbow patterns. Strange flowers grew in spiral shapes, and the air smelled like cinnamon and fresh rain. Lisa set up her equipment near a cluster of unusual plants she wanted to study. Amy found a comfortable spot on a fallen log and began drawing pictures of the colorful flowers. Whiskers positioned himself between Amy and the deeper part of the forest like a furry guardian. Look at this one, Mama. Amy held up her drawing of a flower that looked like a spinning top. It's so pretty. That's wonderful, sweetheart, Lisa said, adjusting her camera to photograph a plant with crystal-like petals. Keep drawing while I work. Neither of them noticed the shadow moving through the trees. Kethvar had been awake all night planning his hunt. In the old days, before the Zephyrians had learned to hide their true nature from other species, the hunt was everything. It was life. It was purpose. It was the greatest joy his people knew. For 3 years he had pretended to be civilized. He had eaten their tasteless artificial foods and smiled at the humans with their strange customs. But yesterday, when he saw the small human child, something ancient had awakened inside him. The hunt called to him. He moved through the forest like a shadow, his natural camouflage making him nearly invisible among the silver trees. His compound eyes tracked every movement, every sound. His body remembered how to be perfectly still, how to move without making noise, how to strike at exactly the right moment. The humans were predictable creatures. They followed the same paths, visited the same places, felt safe in their routines. Kethvar had watched Dr. Carter bring her child to this spot many times before. It was isolated enough that screams wouldn't carry back to the town, perfect for hunting. Lisa knelt next to a plant with glowing blue stems, completely absorbed in her work. She measured its height, photographed its flowers, and collected samples of its sap. Her scientific mind was focused on discovery and cataloging. Amy hummed quietly as she drew, her small fingers gripping her colored pencils. She was drawing Whiskers, now trying to capture the way his whiskers twitched when he was concentrating. Whiskers was concentrating very hard indeed. His ears swiveled constantly, tracking sounds that human ears couldn't detect. His nose twitched as he caught unfamiliar scents on the breeze. Something was out there, something that didn't belong. The cat's primitive brain recognized what Lisa's educated mind couldn't accept. A predator was stalking them. Not just any predator, but one that had chosen his family as prey. Kethvar crept closer, using the thick silver tree trunks as cover. The small human was perfect, young, tender, unaware of danger. She would be easy to take, easy to carry back to his den. The mother would be too shocked to react quickly enough to stop him. He had studied human weaknesses during their 3 years of friendship. Humans were slow, weak, and relied too much on their tools. They had no natural weapons, no sharp claws or teeth. They were prey animals pretending to be civilized. The Zephyrian elder positioned himself behind a large tree only 30 feet from the humans. His breathing slowed as his hunting instincts took complete control. Every muscle in his body coiled like a spring, ready to unleash explosive speed and deadly force. This was what he had been born for. This was his true nature. Lisa stood up to photograph the plant from a different angle, turning her back to Amy for just a moment. It was the opportunity Kethvar had been waiting for. The alien predator erupted from his hiding place with incredible speed. His 8-foot frame unfolded to full height as he launched himself toward the unsuspecting child. His razor-sharp claws extended from his fingertips, designed to slice through flesh and bone. Amy looked up from her drawing just as the massive creature burst from the trees. She opened her mouth to scream, but no sound came out. Terror froze her in place as death approached on 6 legs. But Kethvar had made a crucial mistake. He had focused so completely on his chosen prey that he had forgotten about the small, furry guardian. Whiskers saw the attack coming before Lisa even turned around. The cat's predatory instincts, honed by millions of years of evolution, kicked in instantly. He didn't think about the size difference or calculate his chances of winning. He only knew that something was trying to hurt Amy. The 12-pound tabby cat transformed into a bundle of pure fury. Every peaceful day spent napping in sunny windows and playing with toy mice vanished from his mind. What remained was the genetic memory of saber-toothed cats, of lions stalking across ancient savannas, of tigers dropping from trees onto unsuspecting prey. Whiskers launched himself through the air with a yowl of pure rage that echoed through the forest. His claws extended to their full length, his teeth bared in a snarl that would have made his wild ancestors proud. Kethvar barely had time to register the small projectile flying toward his face. He had expected easy prey and minimal resistance. What he got was a furious ball of claws and teeth that knew exactly where to strike. The cat hit the alien square in the compound eyes, his claws finding their target with surgical precision. Kethvar's hunting scream turned into one of pain and surprise as razor-sharp claws tore into his most vulnerable organs. Lisa spun around at the commotion to see the most incredible sight of her life. Her gentle house cat, the same animal that purred when Amy scratched his chin, was fighting a creature 10 times his size with the ferocity of a wild tiger. And somehow, impossibly, he was winning. The battle for Amy's life had begun, and the outcome would shock everyone involved. The forest exploded into chaos as Whiskers collided with Kethvar's face. The cat's claws raked across the alien's compound eyes, sending streams of green blood flowing down the predator's face. The Zephyrian's hunting cry turned into a shriek of pain and rage. Kethvar staggered backward, his long arms flailing as he tried to grab the small fury that was shredding his vision. But Whiskers was too fast, too angry, and too determined to be caught easily. The cat used his claws like climbing hooks, staying attached to the alien's head while continuing his relentless attack. "Get away from my Amy," the cat seemed to scream, though his words were nothing but furious yowls and hisses. Lisa stood frozen in shock, her scientific mind struggling to process what she was seeing. This was her house cat, the same animal that was afraid of vacuum cleaners and slept curled up in Amy's bed every night. Now he was fighting like a wild beast, moving with speed and precision that seemed impossible. Amy remained on her log too, scared to move or speak. She watched her beloved pet battle the monster that had tried to grab her. Tears streamed down her face, but her eyes never left Whiskers. Kethvar finally managed to grab Whiskers with one of his razor-sharp hands. He squeezed, expecting to crush the small creature easily. But the cat's fury only increased. Whiskers twisted in the alien's grip and sank his teeth deep into the predator's wrist, right where the major blood vessels ran close to the surface. More green blood spurted from the wound. Kethvar's grip loosened for just a second, and that was all Whiskers needed. The cat pulled free and immediately went for the alien's throat, his instincts guiding him to the most vulnerable spots. The Zephyrian tried to use his other arm to swat Whiskers away, but the cat was ready. He dodged the clumsy attack and raked his claws across the alien's neck, opening several deep cuts. Green ichor flowed freely now, staining the silver leaves of the forest floor. For the first time in his life, Kethvar felt fear. He was the predator, the hunter, the one who struck from shadows and took prey by surprise. But this small earth creature was treating him like prey. Every move the cat made was calculated to cause maximum damage. Every strike found its mark. Whiskers fought with the accumulated fury of 10,000 years of domestication. Every wild instinct that had been buried under comfortable living came roaring back to life. He was no longer a pet. He was a predator, defending his territory and his pack. The cat's movements were a blur of orange and white fur. He climbed over Kethvar's body like it was a tree, using his claws to maintain his grip while he searched for new targets. The alien's attempts to grab him only resulted in more wounds as Whiskers twisted away from each attack. "Whiskers!" Amy finally found her voice, though it came out as barely a whisper. The sound of his girl's voice gave the cat even more strength. He looked back at Amy for just a moment, checking that she was safe, then returned to his battle with renewed determination. Kethvar was losing blood fast. His compound eyes were badly damaged, making it hard to track the cat's movements. His wrist was torn open and his neck had multiple deep cuts. But he was still 8 feet tall and weighed 10 times more than his small opponent. The alien predator made one last desperate attempt to win the fight. He threw himself toward Amy, hoping to grab the child while the cat was distracted. If he could get the prey in his grasp, maybe the small fury would stop attacking him. But Whiskers anticipated the move. The cat launched himself from Kethvar's shoulder and landed directly in front of Amy, his back arched and every hair standing on end. He looked like a small orange and white demon, his green eyes blazing with protective rage. "You will not touch her," his posture seemed to say. "Not while I still breathe." Kethvar lunged forward with his remaining strength, his claws reaching for Amy one final time. Whiskers met the attack head-on, leaping straight up to intercept the alien's arm. His claws found the major artery in Kethvar's forearm and opened it wide. The Zephyrian's hunting scream died in his throat as his lifeblood poured out onto the forest floor. He collapsed to his knees, then fell forward onto his face. The great predator's body shuddered once, and then went still. Whiskers landed on top of the alien's corpse, his fur still standing on end, his claws still extended. He stayed there for several seconds, making sure the threat was truly over. Only when he was certain that Kethvar was dead did he jump down and run to Amy. The little girl scooped up her hero and held him tight against her chest. "Whiskers! Oh, Whiskers, you saved me!" The cat's fury melted away as soon as he felt Amy's arms around him. He began to purr, though it was shaky and weak. Now that the fight was over, he could feel the pain from his wounds. Kethvar's claws had found their mark several times, leaving deep cuts in the cat's fur and skin. Lisa finally broke free of her shock and ran to her daughter and their brave guardian. "Whiskers, you amazing cat," she whispered, gently checking his injuries. "You incredible, wonderful cat." But their relief was short-lived. From deeper in the forest came the sound of clicking voices. More Zephyrians were approaching, drawn by their elders' death cries. Lisa looked at the approaching sounds, then at her wounded cat and frightened daughter. They were 20 minutes from town, alone in the forest, with more predators coming, and Whiskers, their only protector, was bleeding and exhausted from his first battle. The clicking sounds got closer. "Can you walk?" Lisa asked Amy, trying to keep the fear out of her voice. Amy nodded, still holding Whiskers carefully. "Is Whiskers going to be okay?" "He's going to be fine," Lisa lied, though she could see green alien blood mixed with red cat, blood on Whiskers' fur. "But we need to get home right now." The cat lifted his head and looked toward the approaching sounds. His ears flattened against his skull, and his tail started to twitch again. Even wounded and tired, he was ready to fight again if necessary. But Lisa knew that no matter how brave Whiskers was, he couldn't fight an entire pack of alien predators. They started running toward town, hoping to reach safety before the other. Zephyrians found Kethavar's body. Behind them, the clicking sounds grew closer and more urgent. The hunt was not over yet. Lisa ran through the forest carrying Amy while Whiskers clung weakly to the little girl's arms. Behind them, the clicking sounds of the approaching Zephyrians grew louder and more urgent. The aliens had found Kethavar's body. "Mama, I can't run anymore," Amy panted, her small legs struggling to keep up with her mother's desperate pace. Lisa's heart pounded as she realized they wouldn't make it to town in time. The Zephyrians were faster than humans, and she could hear them gaining ground. She pulled out her emergency communicator and pressed the alarm button. "Colony security, this is Dr. Carter." She gasped into the device. "We're in the North Forest. Kethavar attacked Amy. Whiskers killed him. More aliens coming. Need help now." The response came immediately from Commander Pete Walsh. "Copy that, Dr. Carter. We're on our way. Find cover and stay put." But there was no cover to be found. The silver trees offered no hiding places, and the clicking sounds were getting closer every second. Lisa could see movement through the trees now, tall, dark shapes moving with deadly purpose. "There," Amy pointed to a cluster of large rocks ahead. "We can hide behind those." They reached the rocks just as the first Zephyrians broke through the tree line. There were 5 of them, all as tall as Kethavar had been, all with the same razor-sharp claws and compound eyes. When they saw the humans, they made excited clicking sounds and spread out to surround the rocks. Lisa held Amy close while Whiskers tried to stand on shaky legs. The brave cat was badly hurt, with deep cuts across his side and back, but he still positioned himself between his family and the approaching predators. The lead Zephyrian stepped forward and spoke in accented English. "You killed our hunt leader. This breaks our peace agreement. Now we will take what he was trying to claim." "Kethavar attacked my daughter," Lisa shouted back. "We were defending ourselves." "Your small pet killed a Zephyrian elder," the alien replied. "This cannot go unpunished. Give us the small human and we will let you live." "Never," Lisa said firmly, though her voice shook with fear. The Zephyrians began to close in, their movements coordinated like a pack of wolves. Their eyes reflected the sunlight as they focused on Amy, just as Kethavar's had done. The hunt was still on, and now they had 5 predators instead of 1. Whiskers let out a weak hiss and tried to arch his back, but his injuries were too severe. He could barely stand, much less fight 5 giant aliens. Still, he didn't back down. He would defend Amy until his last breath. The sound of engines filled the air as 3 colony security vehicles crashed through the forest, their armored hulls pushing aside smaller trees. Commander Walsh and 6 armed colonists jumped out, weapons raised. "Stand down," Walsh shouted at the Zephyrians. "This is human territory under colonial law." But the aliens didn't seem interested in law or diplomacy anymore. "Your people broke the peace first," their leader snarled. "Now we hunt until we are satisfied." More clicking sounds came from the deeper forest. Lisa's heart sank as she realized these 5 aliens were just the beginning. The entire Zephyrian settlement was coming and they wanted blood. "How many weapons do we have?" Lisa asked Walsh as the security team took positions behind the vehicles. "Not enough," Walsh replied grimly. "Maybe 20 rifles total in the whole colony. There are over 200 Zephyrians in their settlement." The first group of aliens began to advance again, ignoring the human weapons pointed at them. They had studied human technology for 3 years and knew that the colonists had brought only basic defensive equipment. Nothing that could stop a determined alien hunting pack. Amy hugged Whiskers tighter as the cat struggled to stay alert. "Will Whiskers be okay?" she whispered to her mother. Lisa looked down at their brave guardian. Green and red blood matted his orange fur and his breathing was shallow. But his eyes were still alert, still watching for threats to his family. "He's the bravest cat in the universe," Lisa told her daughter. "He'll be fine." But privately, Lisa wondered if any of them would survive the next few minutes. The Zephyrians were almost within striking distance when a new sound filled the forest. It was a deep, threatening bark that echoed off the trees. Then another bark and another. Rex, the colony's German Shepherd security dog, burst through the tree line at full speed. His black and tan fur bristled with aggression as he charged toward the aliens. Behind him came Max, the golden retriever from the Anderson family, and Luna, the border collie who worked with the farmers. But the dogs weren't alone. Running alongside them were creatures that made Lisa gasp in amazement. Local animals from Kepler 442b, wolf-like predators, bear-sized creatures with massive claws, and even some of the aerial hunters that usually stayed in the high mountains. How is this possible? Commander Walsh stared in shock as the unlikely pack surrounded the Zephyrians. Lisa looked down at Whiskers, who had lifted his head to watch the approaching reinforcements. The cat made a soft chirping sound, the same noise he used to call Amy to dinner. But somehow every predator in the forest had heard it and understood. The Earth dogs took positions alongside the alien predators, forming a protective circle around the humans. Rex stood directly in front of the lead Zephyrian, his lips pulled back to show impressive fangs. The local wolf creatures flanked the dogs, their own teeth gleaming in the forest light. Above them, the aerial hunters circled like living shadows, ready to dive down on any threat. Even old Pepper, the colony's ancient beagle, had somehow made it to the fight. The old dog could barely walk on normal days, but now he stood with the pack, growling at aliens 10 times his size. The Zephyrians found themselves surrounded by dozens of predators from 2 different worlds. Their confident advance stopped as they realized they were no longer the hunters. They had become the prey. Whiskers made another soft sound, and every animal in the forest seemed to understand. This was his family. This was his territory. Anyone who threatened them would have to go through all of them. The lead Zephyrian looked around at the sea of teeth, claws, and hostile eyes surrounding his hunting pack. For the first time in his life, he felt what his prey usually experienced: the cold touch of fear. "Impossible," he clicked to his companions. "These creatures should not work together. They are from different worlds, different species." But Rex didn't care about the impossibility of the situation. He only knew that something had threatened the colony's children, and that was unacceptable. The big German Shepherd took a step forward, his bark deep and threatening. The other predators echoed his challenge, creating a wall of sound that made the Zephyrian step backward. Amy looked up at her mother with wide eyes. "Mama, why are all the animals here?" Lisa smiled through her tears as she realized what had happened. "Because Whiskers called them. He told them that someone was trying to hurt you. The battle was about to begin, but now the humans weren't alone. They had allies, fierce, loyal allies who understood that some things were worth fighting for." Whiskers purred weakly in Amy's arms, watching his pack prepare for war. The forest had become a battleground unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Earth animals and alien predators stood side by side, united by a single purpose: protecting the small human child and her brave guardian. Rex, the German Shepherd, stepped forward first. His deep bark echoed through the trees as he faced the lead Zephyrian. The alien was 3 times taller, with razor-sharp claws and compound eyes designed for hunting, but the dog showed no fear. This is not possible. The Zephyrian leader clicked to his hunting pack. These creatures have no reason to work together. They should be fighting each other, not us. But the alien predator was thinking like a Zephyrian, not understanding the bonds that connected Earth's animals to their human families. Rex didn't care about logic or possibility. He only knew that Amy belonged to his pack and his pack was being threatened. The local wolf creatures padded forward to join Rex. These alien predators had their own reasons for being here. Whiskers had somehow communicated with them, sharing the universal language of protection and family that crossed all species barriers. Luna, the border collie, positioned herself near Amy and began herding the other dogs into formation. Her instincts told her to gather the pack and protect the young ones. Even old Pepper, breathing hard from his journey through the forest, took his place in the defensive line. Above them, the aerial hunters circled like living storms. Their sharp cries filled the air as they prepared to dive down on any Zephyrian who tried to reach the humans. Commander Walsh and his security team watched in amazement as nature itself rose up to defend their colony. "I've never seen anything like this," he whispered to Lisa. "How did they all know to come here?" Lisa looked down at Whiskers, who was purring weakly in Amy's arms despite his injuries. He called them somehow, all of them. The standoff lasted only seconds before the Zephyrian leader made his move. He lunged toward Amy with his claws extended, confident that his speed and size would let him break through the animal defenders. He was wrong. Rex met the alien's charge head-on, his powerful jaws clamping down on the Zephyrian's forearm. At the same time, two of the local wolf creatures hit the alien from the sides, their own teeth finding soft spots between the creature's natural armor. The other Zephyrians tried to help their leader, but they found themselves facing a coordinated attack from multiple directions. Max and Luna worked together to bring down one alien, while the aerial hunters dove from above to confuse and disorient the others. The forest erupted into chaos, but it was a controlled chaos. The animals fought with purpose and intelligence, not the random violence of wild beasts. They had learned from Whisker's example. Every move was calculated to protect the humans and drive away the threat. One Zephyrian tried to circle around the main battle to reach Amy from behind, but Pepper was waiting for him. The old beagle might have been slow and arthritic, but he still had his teeth. He latched onto the alien's ankle and held on with grim determination, tripping the creature and giving the other animals time to respond. The Zephyrian leader found himself overwhelmed by attackers he couldn't see coming. Rex's jaws were still locked on his arm while alien claws raked across his back and sides. Every time he tried to strike at one attacker, another would hit him from a different direction. "Retreat!" He finally clicked to his surviving pack members. "This is not hunting. This is war." But the animals weren't interested in letting them retreat peacefully. They had tasted victory and smelled the fear from their enemies. The predators from both worlds pursued the fleeing Zephyrians, making sure they understood that this territory was permanently off-limits. Rex released the leader's arm and stood over him, blood dripping from his muzzle. The alien looked up at the dog with new understanding in his compound eyes. These weren't just animals. They were soldiers, warriors who fought for something greater than themselves. The German shepherd's message was clear. "If you come for our children again, we'll be waiting." The surviving Zephyrians disappeared into the deep forest, their clicking voices fading into the distance. The hunting pack that had seemed so threatening just minutes before had been reduced to a few wounded aliens running for their lives. As the immediate danger passed, the animal defenders began to disperse. The local predators melted back into the forest as quietly as they had arrived. The aerial hunters returned to their mountain homes. Even the colony dogs started trotting back toward town, their duty fulfilled. But Rex remained, sitting calmly, beside Amy and Whiskers like a furry guardian angel. Amy looked up at her mother with tears in her eyes. "Will they come back?" Commander Walsh answered for Lisa. "No, sweetheart, I don't think they will. I think they learned something today that they won't forget." Lisa knelt down to examine Whiskers more carefully. The brave cat was still breathing, though his injuries were serious. "We need to get him to Dr. Martinez right away," she said. As they prepared to head back to town, Amy held her wounded hero close to her chest. "Thank you, Whiskers," she whispered. "Thank you for saving me." The bee. Cat looked up at his girl with tired but content eyes. His purr was weak but steady. He had done what every cat in the universe was born to do. He had protected his family. The ride back to town was quiet except for the hum of the vehicles and Whiskers' gentle purring. Commander Walsh sent a priority message to Earth Command. Colony secure, alien threat neutralized, casualties minimal. Recommend immediate study of human-animal cooperation in combat situations. At the medical center, Dr. Martinez worked carefully to clean and stitch Whiskers' wounds. "He's going to be fine," the doctor assured Amy. "This is one tough cat. The cuts look worse than they are." Amy stayed by Whiskers' side as he recovered, telling him stories and promising him all the tuna he could eat when he got better. Dying, Cat listened with half-closed eyes, content to be surrounded by his family. Later that evening, Captain Jake Miller visited the medical center to check on the hero of the day. He found Amy asleep in a chair next to Whiskers' recovery bed. Her small hand resting on the cat's fur. "How's our brave warrior doing?" he asked Lisa quietly. "Better than expected," Lisa replied. "The doctor says he'll make a full recovery. No permanent damage." Miller looked down at the sleeping cat and shook his head in wonder. A 12-pound house cat took down an 8-foot alien predator and then called in reinforcements from across the planet. If I hadn't seen the aftermath myself, I never would have believed it. Earth's animals have been protecting human children for thousands of years, Lisa said softly. We just never had to test that bond against alien predators before. Over the next few days, word of the battle spread throughout the human colony and beyond. Scientists from Earth requested detailed reports about the unprecedented cooperation between Earth animals and alien predators. Military strategists wanted to study how a domestic cat had organized a multi-species defense force. But for Amy, none of that mattered. What mattered was that Whiskers was getting stronger every day, and soon he would be well enough to come home and sleep in her bed again. On the day Whiskers was released from the medical center, the entire colony turned out. To honor their unlikely hero, Captain Miller presented the cat with a special medal, the Colony Defense Award, the first ever given to a non-human. Whiskers tolerated the ceremony with typical feline dignity, though he seemed more interested in the tuna treats Amy kept feeding him than in the speeches about his bravery. That night, as Amy tucked Whiskers into bed beside her, she whispered, "I love you, Whiskers. You're the best cat in the whole galaxy." The cat purred and settled into his favorite spot on Amy's pillow. Tomorrow would bring new adventures, new things to explore, and new threats to watch for. But tonight, his family was safe. His territory was secure, and all was right with the world. In the forest beyond the town, the surviving Zephyrians told their story to anyone who would listen. They spoke of a small earth creature with the heart of a giant, who had called upon the very planet itself to defend a human child. The galaxy had learned an important lesson. Never underestimate the fury of Earth's creatures when their pack is threatened. And never ever reach for a human child when their guardian is watching, because somewhere on that distant world, a fat tabby cat named Whiskers was always listening, always watching, and always ready to defend his family with everything he had. The hunt was over and the protectors had won.